Tonight, an SAS soldier accused of killing another civilian in Afghanistan. Also tonight, the youngest Australian to die from coronavirus as the Prime Minister puts pressure on Tasmania to reopen its border. Fears a massive building stimulus could leave the hardest hit Tasmanians left out. And just imagine all she's seen, a Tasmanian's 109th birthday. Good evening, Guy Stayner with ABC News. An Australian Special Forces soldier filmed shooting dead an unarmed Afghan man is also being investigated for the alleged unlawful killing of another civilian. ABC Investigations has spoken to members of an SAS patrol who allege the same soldier killed an unarmed disabled man on an earlier operation in 2012. Mark Willesee has this exclusive report and a warning: it contains scenes that some viewers may find distressing.
It was this SAS helmet camera vision broadcast by Four Corners that for the first time showed how some individuals in Australia's Special Forces dealt with Afghan civilians. Brought down by an Australian dog and curled up on the ground in a wheat field, this young man is quiet, compliant and unarmed. Training his weapon on him is an SAS operator known as Soldier C.
Quick, no! Quick!
After this killing was broadcast in March, Soldier C was stood down. He's now being investigated by the Australian Federal Police. The ABC can now reveal that Soldier C is alleged to have killed another unarmed Afghan 2 months before the Wheatfield shooting. Two members of Soldier C's patrol that day have told the ABC they witnessed the killing. Both say the victim was unarmed, a civilian, and was intellectually disabled. One says he was limping away from the Australians in fear when Soldier C shot him in the back of the head from 15 to 20 metres away. One SAS patrol member says the dead man was then dressed in a combat chest rig containing assault rifle magazines so that they could claim he was a combatant. It's an incident known among the Special Forces as the village idiot killing. The soldiers also say the killing was covered up. At a briefing after the incident, the patrol was told that the man should be regarded as a high-value target and therefore a legitimate kill. An ABC investigation has tracked down the victim's relatives and discovered that the dead man's name was Zia Uddin, a farmer in his early 20s from Kandahar province, who his family says was mentally disabled.
There was a raid. Helicopters landed at 11 in the morning. Ziauddin was about 80 to 100 metres away from them and was walking home. But then the soldiers shot him in here. The bullet had pierced through his skull.
The ABC can confirm this case, like the killing in the Wheatfield, is being investigated by the Australian Federal Police.
We have a number of active, and we're on the record, a number of active investigations in relation to war crimes.
How seriously is the AFP taking these allegations?
Very seriously.
The two cases involving Soldier C are being investigated by the Inspector General of the Australian Defence Force as part of an inquiry into alleged war crimes in Afghanistan. And Defence says it would be inappropriate to comment while that inquiry is still underway. Mark Willesee, ABC News.
Scott Morrison, unions and business groups are leaving themselves room to negotiate on possible changes to workplace laws, avoiding blanket guarantees that all workers must be better off. The talks begin next month, but while the participants are eager to be involved, federal Labor is being left firmly on the sidelines. Here's National Affairs correspondent Greg Jennett.
Back when beers, pubs and footy on TV were normal, the Albanese leadership began on this day last year. A couple of crises later,
Shame on you!
the anniversaries met with a campaign to save a seat and bemusement at the sudden interest in a new industrial relations agenda.
It's a good thing that people are having discussions. I always do have discussions. There's nothing new in it.
Except Labor's locked out and deliberately from these discussions.
The jobs is the thing. That's what's got to unite everybody.
We're going into this with an open mind and also, optimism.
The ALP's industrial wing, not its political one, will share centre stage in talks the Prime Minister's set up with business and unions. In search of repairs to a system with conflict at its core. But exactly what are they trying to fix? For workers, the grievances are slow wages growth, even when profits were good, casual jobs instead of permanent ones, and making companies comply with laws. For business, it's the complexity of awards and enterprise agreements. In all, 5 discussions to be had in just 4 months.
There is a strong level of agreement, at least, that problems exist that need to be solved.
Flexibility for job creation in the COVID-hit economy's the buzzword. The government's even leaving room for failure on some of the 5 fronts in the hope of compromise on a couple. Goodwill's a feature at the outset, and it extends to avoiding traditional deal-breaking tests like all workers needing to be better off before change can be contemplated, a measure of just how much COVID-19 has changed the landscape. Greg Jennett, ABC News, Canberra.
A 30-year-old Queensland man has become the youngest person to die from coronavirus in Australia. Nathan Turner was found dead at his home yesterday afternoon in Blackwater. The 30-year-old miner was later tested for COVID-19 and that came back positive. The fatality has sparked a major health emergency with a crisis clinic set up in the small regional town. The man's partner is in home isolation after experiencing symptoms but returned a negative test. It's the first case of coronavirus in the town.
This gentleman who has passed away was ill for some time and did not get tested.
Queensland Health is investigating any link to a Rockhampton nurse who worked at an aged care centre while unwell. The ABC understands the nurse had also been in Blackwater before she was diagnosed. The Prime Minister has rounded on his Liberal Premier colleagues, calling on the leaders of states, including Tasmania, to explain why their borders are still closed. Scott Morrison told Sky News the federal government had not received medical advice recommending border closures within Australia. He said such restrictions were bad for the economy.
So those individual states, they'll have to justify those decisions themselves, and because it wasn't something that came out of National Cabinet.
Premier Peter Gutwein has repeatedly said he won't be pressured into making an announcement on Tasmania's borders before July. The Tasmanian government's flagged plans for the most aggressive construction program in the state's history to help revive the economy. It's been welcomed by the building sector, but some fear it will leave large groups missing out, especially women and young children who have borne more of the job losses caused by the shutdown. As a result, the government's being urged to spread the stimulus more widely.
Just over 2 years ago, Daniela Musher began her dream career at Hobart Airport. Now the 21-year-old doesn't know when or if she'll return to her position as a check-in agent after being stood down in March.
It's just very scary and concerning. If that was the case where I was made redundant, I'm going to have to start all over again.
It's a common story. Colony 47's assistance program to help young people back into work has seen a sharp increase in their caseload. It's up 60%, from 300 participants to 500 within weeks.
The vast majority are young people who have been in employment, who have actually been stood down as a consequence of COVID.
68% of those new cases are women.
There's not a lot of confidence that when COVID does disappear, that there'll actually be a position for them to go back to.
The state government's planning an aggressive construction program to build the economy back up. While that's expected to help, it's a male-dominated industry, and economists say more will be needed to help women and young people get back to work.
Young people have, to an even greater extent than women, borne a disproportionate share of the job losses that have occurred as a result of the shutdown.
Employment for Tasmanians under 20 has fallen by almost 11%. For those under 29, it's down 10%.
other sectors of the economy, particularly those that will be subject to ongoing restrictions, such as tourism, hospitality and the arts, I think also warrant some additional support for longer than the end of September.
For now, Daniela is relying on JobKeeper, but she's worried about what will happen to her finances when the payment ends.
Definitely stressful knowing that I'm going to have to do something soon, as I can't just wait around and guarantee that I've got a job at the end of this.
A feeling shared by many as the pandemic continues. Alexandra Humphreys, ABC News.
Talks are underway between Tasmania's Liquor Licensing Commissioner and stakeholder groups about ways to improve safety on Tasmania's waterfront when venues reopen. The Police Association is pushing for restrictions to early morning alcohol sales. Some medical professionals want the government to go further and reduce the availability of alcohol in other areas as well.
COVID-19 has closed venues in Hobart's busy waterfront precinct. For police, the absence of people drinking has meant a significant drop in crime.
Violence, injury, sexual assaults, urination, vomiting, bad behaviour.
Last month, assaults in public places involving alcohol and drugs in the Hobart Division dropped by 89% compared to the same time last year. Public order incidents nearly halved, and police issued 87% fewer liquor infringement notices. The Police Association wants licensing laws changed to stop waterfront venues serving alcohol after 2 a.m.
Why wouldn't we cautiously approach the reopening and even consider reducing down the out-of-hours permits?
Emergency department doctors want a broader review of licensing laws.
This is an opportunity to look at late night, early morning rules, regulations, so that we can avoid going back to the chaos that we had before.
The Hospitality Association says waterfront venues are safe and can't afford more licensing restrictions when they reopen.
We've got a lot of venues out there that are potentially going to shut. There's a lot of people worried about their life, their livelihoods, the staff's livelihood, etc. We don't need people taking pot shots at our industry.
The Liquor Licensing Commissioner is in discussions with waterfront stakeholders.
They're looking at what can be done in that area to make sure the safety of the patrons and of course the enjoyment of the patrons in that area.
The government says the Commissioner has already imposed conditions and reduced operating hours where appropriate. Laura Beavis, ABC News.
Animal and plant species which were already considered endangered or threatened may have been totally wiped out by the last fire season. The Royal Commission into the bushfires has heard the inferno was an ecological disaster. Anna Henderson reports.
These images are seared into the nation's memory of fire season. Desperate animals struggling to outrun danger.
It is going to take 30, 50 years to restore animals back into good numbers, but unless we address the issues with our changing climate, that's never going to happen.
This koala hospital has returned almost all that survived back to the wild now, but the Royal Commission has heard many animals did not make it.
An ecological disaster.
The fires burned with an unusual intensity and devastating results.
More than 300 of these nationally listed threatened species were in the path of the fire. The entire known range of some species was burnt.
But among the evidence of biodiversity lost, a tale of survival. The Jurassic-era Wallamai pines are in a secret New South Wales location. Only a handful of the living fossils are known to exist across the world. Over summer, an extraordinary plant rescue was undertaken. In the end, webcams were left to monitor when it got too dangerous for specialist firefighters to stay.
If the canopy had burnt, the results would have been catastrophic.
The Royal Commission heard Australia has globally distinct biodiversity, and only about 30% of what's here has been named and identified. It's possible over the fire season, some species have disappeared before they were ever discovered by Western science. Anna Henderson, ABC News, Canberra.
Still to come on ABC News, riot police and demonstrators clash in Hong Kong. And will police soon be able to road test your eyesight? The post-pandemic recovery has begun for Tasmania's retailers. Department store Myer opened its Hobart and Launceston doors for the first time in weeks today. While it's a boost for consumer confidence, for some small stores it won't be enough. Alison Branley reports.
This gift shop in Hobart shut its doors for just one day during the COVID restrictions.
If we didn't have the digital presence and we weren't online already and we didn't have our strong social media, I don't think we'd come out of it alive. Now restrictions are starting to ease a little. We are seeing a lot more foot traffic in the actual bricks and mortar store. Our problem is just keeping up with our beautiful customers' orders.
Now major chains are joining in, with Myer reopening today in Hobart and Launceston.
Big businesses have been feeling the pain just like the small businesses. I think the increase in people into the city, into the major department stores, into smaller stores is really heartening.
Today, customers seized the opportunity to shop in store.
I actually am running out of makeup and perfume and stuff.
They've got a nice choice of stuff in there that, when you're buying menswear.
There's not a lot of options in Launceston, so yeah, it's good for the town really.
We were all concerned that Myer was going to close down, so we're glad it's not.
Launceston's retailers have struggled more than those in Hobart.
First month was super tough, and we just had no idea what was going to happen. But slowly, piece by piece, people have been coming back to town.
Experts say JobKeeper has been keeping many shops afloat, but when it finishes, new help will be needed.
And sadly, I think we're going to see a number of businesses won't survive coming through COVID-19. Some of the things that I think will help will be local councils perhaps looking at rate reductions or stopping payments for a period of time, individual landlords negotiating with individual retailers about rentals and those sorts of things, perhaps some marketing campaigns.
Shifting sales online has meant success for many.
For some of these retailers, is it going to be worth them actually reopening their physical stores?
Retail coming back, but very different than before. Alison Branley, ABC News.
It's now been 4 months since the country's first case of coronavirus. And in the latest round of surveys, the ABC asked the question, "How are you doing, Australia?" to gauge the mood of the nation. Here's Casey Briggs with the results.
We already know people are feeling lonelier and more anxious. But the news from the latest ABC Vox Pop Lab survey isn't all bad.
Around 4 in 5 Australians said they were coping very well, but only around half that thought Australians in general felt the same way. Older people tended to think Australians were doing better, 51% of those aged over 65, compared to just 28% of people under 35. And those on the political right tended to be more optimistic than those on the left.
What that data is saying is, our individualised concern is relatively, minimal. But actually, I have concern for other people. And of course, what we know is that that's driving people's behaviour. That's why people are complying.
The curve's flat, but that doesn't mean there's less concern out there.
In fact, the opposite is true. 36% of people are now very concerned about the pandemic, the highest that's been in the past 5 weeks. As we get out and about more, fears that a family member or friend will contract the virus have also increased. And worries about the health of the Australian economy are at a high, up 6% in the past week.
It's our grandchildren's future that really is the big question mark for us.
I'm not one of the percentage that is stressed. I feel just do the right thing, stay away from, do the social distancing.
People have adapted their lifestyles dramatically, in big ways and small.
Search traffic for terms like banana bread, brownies and bread all peaked last month. Interest in sourdough has risen more than 6-fold, but they're now all on the decline. As cafes open up, Australia might be over its need to need.
A judge in Jerusalem has found former Melbourne school principal Malka Lifer is fit to be brought back to Australia to face 74 charges of child sexual abuse. The ruling is a significant victory for her alleged victims, who've been fighting for 6 years to have her extradited. Malka Lifer's lawyers have claimed the 54-year-old is suffering from debilitating mental illness, but the Israeli court has found she's been faking her condition and is fit to travel.
I hope that this moment will show all those survivors across the world that they too have a voice and give them the encouragement to speak out.
Malka Lifer's lawyers are prepared to appeal to Israel's Supreme Court. Police in Hong Kong have arrested 180 people protesting against the introduction of a controversial national anthem law. Riot police fired pepper pellets and tear gas to disperse demonstrators and onlookers in the central business district. The protesters are angry about new legislation that will make insulting China's national anthem a criminal offence, with up to 3 years jail and a $10,000 fine. It's seen by many as another attempt by China to erode Hong Kong's freedom as a semi-autonomous city.
The Hong Kong people fully understand that this is a very important battle for Hong Kong people to fight against the other evil law, to uphold the one country, two system.
Hong Kong's parliament is set to debate the bill in the next few days. Well, the unrest in Hong Kong triggered some late selling on the Australian market, but investors flocked back to the banks. Here's Philip Lasker.
The Australian share market essentially held on to its gains, and it's pretty much all the banks. The local market's financial index has rallied nearly 12% this week. Look at the big players. This was a great day for the Gang of Four. NAB increased the size of its capital raising by $750 million from $500 million. Investors think the downturn won't be as bad as first thought. This price earnings measure factors in what UBS thinks will be the bank's provisions for bad loans. If you reckon the economy will be hit hard with a high number of bad loans, the banks look expensive. But strip away the bad loan provisions and look at profit before tax, the banks are cheap. So those feeling the bad news is overdone are buying these stocks. The domestic market slipped 5 points after a very strong start to the week. Optimism is not good for gold shares, but energy stocks are recovering. The latest construction numbers show what happened during the March quarter this year. It doesn't account for the full coronavirus effect, but building and construction were weakening. Apartments drove most of the fall. Instead of buying new homes, people started renovating, as you can see by the pickup in alterations. It's going to get much worse, though. That's why the government is considering a round of housing grants to support the industry. The Australian dollar is close to a 3-month high against the greenback. It's well above 66 US cents, and that's finance.
A Tasmanian optometrist has set his sights on solving a policing problem: how to make sure drivers are meeting the legal vision standard. He's designed a handheld device to make roadside eye tests as simple as being breathalyzed.
Breath testing, drug testing. Could drivers' eyesight be the focus of the next roadside test?
I've been getting a little bit frustrated as an optometrist because I regularly have a conversation with somebody where I say, you need to wear glasses to drive, and they tell me I'm not going to do that, and in Tasmania there's nothing really much I can do about it.
Research in Melbourne and Brisbane has shown up to 8% of drivers don't meet the legal standard for vision. Australian drivers need to meet what's called 612 vision, reading letters about twice the size of 20/20. That's very hard to measure on the side of the road.
Simply asking them to just tell the police officer if they can see a street sign is not appropriate in most circumstances, and it's not reliable enough. And so there is an enforcement issue.
Hobart optometrist Ben Armitage set about finding a way to give police a clearer picture of drivers' eyesight. He designed a device called AcuiDrive that delivers a quick and reliable roadside vision test.
So what will happen is the police officer will hold it up to the person's face, they'll put their forehead in there, which illuminates the chart, and they read the 5 letters.
In Tasmania, drivers' vision is tested when they first get their licence and then when they turn 75. For the decades in between, it's up to the individual to report if their eyesight changes.
That's a long period of time from when most people get their driver's licence to the time that they finish driving, and it's obviously an area that's untapped in terms of its ability to improve our road safety statistics.
The optometrist is in talks with the Queensland University of Technology about trials to prove the device's accuracy.
We need to make sure that if we are going to use this to test people's vision on the side of the road, that if you can't see using this device, you wouldn't be able to see using a test chart.
Once trials are done, he's hoping to get the device into the hands of police and achieve his vision of safer roads. Selena Ross, ABC News.
Now to a story about a special Tasmanian who's lived through 2 world wars, and now Chloe Duncan is partway through her second global pandemic. Today she turned 109, and her family thinks that makes her the oldest person in the state.
It's a birthday Chloe Duncan will never forget. Surrounded by loved ones, cake and balloons, social distancing measures were also part of the celebration.
I wasn't allowed to even give her a kiss for her birthday, but we did give her a bit of chocolate.
She had her visitors this morning, and then this afternoon we had her out in the lounge and everybody sang happy birthday, and we had a beautiful birthday cake.
With only a quick visit permitted, the family stuck Miss Duncan's photo on the wall at home and shared a cake. Her daughter reminiscing about her mother's life.
We used to love knitting and making our clothes, teaching us our prayers when we were little, sending us to Sunday school, and she was a good mother, that's strict.
She's good to talk to, likes a laugh, always loves having a joke and all of that.
Born in 1911, Miss Duncan's lived through 2 world wars, the Great Depression, the Tasmanian floods in 1929 and last century's pandemic, Spanish flu.
Pretty impressive considering everyone struggled with this pandemic. The fact she's lived through 2 and made it through both of them as well is incredible.
Chloe Duncan may be the oldest Tasmanian, although the Department of Justice, Births, Deaths and Marriages is unable to verify it. Her daughter believes it's true and says the secret to her mother's long life is eating your vegetables.
As soon as the baby carrots come through, you've got to pick her a bunch and take up hers. Yeah, things like that. And I think that eating the fresh veggies, I do the same. And I've got to 88.
April McLennan, ABC News.
Happy birthday, Chloe. Tonight's photo of the view from Harts Peak is from Christopher Woods. Here's Simon McCulloch.
Good evening. Cloud increased across the state during the course of the day with a few light showers about parts of the north. Maximum temperatures, they were actually above average today with 19 at Larapuna or Eddystone Point, the state's high. Some exceptions in the Derwent Valley again, which struggled to get up to double figures. They were below average. Overnight temperatures were above average in the north and east, 2 to 5 degrees below average elsewhere. Hobart's range 2 to 15, Launceston 6 to 16, 15 for Burnie and Devonport. Rainfall tonight AM, some light falls about elevated parts of the north. There was 6 at Fisher River, 5 at Lake Mackenzie and 4 at Quamby Bluff. On the satellite sequence, you can see that cloud band that moved across us today, increasing our cloud cover, another 1 to 2 millimetres of rain about northern parts after 9. And there's another front further to the west, a bit of high-level cloud across the north of the country. On the chart, the front just weakens and passes to the south, with the next front also tending to weaken. So west to northwesterly flow tomorrow. Some showers about the west, far south and north at times, but fine for the remainder. On Friday, with this high pressure system moving out to the northeast, a northwesterly flow, this front will just clip the south coast. Some more showers about the west, far south and north again, but mainly fine for the remainder. And as this front approaches us on Saturday, a freshening northwesterly flow, but we can say goodbye to frosty conditions for the time being. Interstate for tomorrow, and showers and possible late storms in Perth, possible showers in Adelaide, early fog in Canberra and Sydney, and fine for the other capitals. Tasmania's forecast some showers in the north, west and far south, but tend to clear out of the north by the middle part of the day, and fine for the remainder. Showers are expected for Strawn tomorrow. Showers clearing from Burnie and a morning shower or 2 for Devonport, a top of 16. Morning shower or 2 for Launceston, 9 to 16. Fine for St Helens and Swansea, and for Hobart, fine and partly cloudy, 8 to 16. Sun to rise tomorrow is at 7:27. Coastal waters, northwesterly winds 10 to 20 knots, tending westerly about the north from late morning and increasing to 20 to 25 knots in the afternoon, reaching 20 to 30 knots in the west and south in the evening, so there's a strong wind warning for the west and south coast. There's a westerly swell up to 4 metres in the west and south, a westerly swell of 1 metre in Bass Strait, and a southerly and easterly swell in the east. On Friday, some showers about the northwest and far south, easing during the afternoon and mainly fine elsewhere. Morning showers for Burnie and Devonport, shower or two for Launceston, fine and 18 for Hobart. And on Saturday, some light showers about parts of the north, with showers developing in the west late as the next front approaches. Should be fine for the remainder, with northwesterly winds locally fresh. Showers increasing for Burnie, Devonport and Launceston. A mostly sunny day though for Hobart. That's tonight's weather. Here's Guy.
Thanks, Simon. That's it for tonight's program. See you tomorrow.